So when these guys wrote the Constitution, it was kind of a fustercluck. I mean, they allowed the South to keep human beings as property, slaves, a move that 75 years later would result in a civil war killing 500,000 Americans. They also didn't let women vote, and they allowed these goobers to keep all the guns they wanted. And now, close to 250 years later, we're arguing over these amendments and trying to ascertain what these men in wigs would have done. And the amendment in question now is the 14th Amendment's Birthright Citizenship Clause. It's Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, and it defines U.S. citizenship as extending to all persons born or naturalized in the United States and then subject to its jurisdiction. It guarantees birthright citizenship, meaning individuals born on U.S. soil are automatically citizens. And surprisingly, this Supreme Court, consisting of 6 conservatives, has an unlikely ally against President Trump, Amy Coney Barrett.
Opinions and judgments here. Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent, say, in New York, because you might disagree with the opinion?
Our general practice is to respect those precedents, but there are circumstances when it is not a categorical practice. It is, and that is not
this administration's practice or the longstanding practice of the federal government. And I'm not talking about in the Fourth Circuit, are you going to respect a Second Circuit? I'm talking about within the Second Circuit. And can you say, is that this administration's practice or a longstanding one?
As I understand it, longstanding
Really?
policy of the Department of Justice. Yes, that we generally, as it was phrased to me, generally respect circuit precedent, but not necessarily in every case. And some examples might be a situation where we're litigating to try and get that circuit precedent overruled and so forth.
Well, okay, so I'm not talking about a situation in which, the Second Circuit has a case from 1955 and you think it's time for it to be challenged. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in this kind of situation. I'm talking about this week, the Second Circuit holds that the executive order is unconstitutional, and then what do you do the next day or the next week?
Generally, we follow those.
So you're still saying generally?
Yes.
And you still think that it's generally the policy, longstanding policy of the federal government to take that approach?
That is my understanding.
Okay, so, but it sounds to me like you accept a Cooper versus Aaron kind of situation for the Supreme Court, but not for, say, the Second Circuit. Like where you would respect the opinions and the judgments of the Supreme Court, and you're saying you would respect the judgment, but not necessarily the opinion of a lower court.
And again, I think in the vast majority of instances, our practice has been to respect the opinion as well, in the circuits as well, but my understanding is that has not been a categorical practice in the way respect for the precedents and the judgments of the Supreme Court has been.
So you're not hedging at all with respect to the precedent of this court?
That is correct. I believe the quotation from our application directly addresses that, and we stand by that completely.
Okay.
So Justice Barrett, who's emerged as a key vote in several cases this year, pressed Trump's lawyer about the government avoiding the merits of the birthright citizenship issue. Her line of questioning drew an important concession from Sauer, Trump's lawyer, who acknowledged the legal arguments defending the merits of Trump's order were novel and sensitive. Those are 2 keywords meaning bullshit. By the way, if you recognize this White House lawyer, it's the same guy, the one that said Trump should have immunity for killing political rivals.
If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
It could, and why? Because he's doing it for personal reasons.
So what's happening here is remarkable in both that Justice Kennedy and Barrett are punching back. And really, can you blame them? Trump is not only exhibiting bias against people of color, and I say that because there hasn't been one word about the nearly 1 million white Europeans here illegally, but Trump is also calling for a nearly impossible task of tracing back parents of millions of Americans and trying to find their records, many of which predate digital databases. Barrett was pushing back on Trump's attorney because, like everything else these cockwaffles bring forward, they have no plan whatsoever of what comes next. Okay, for the record, the 14th Amendment section concerning birthright citizenship was written so African Americans who'd been slaves but were born here could be citizens and then theoretically could vote and do everything Caucasians can do, except for the women who were not allowed to vote, own land, divorce their husbands, and like many states, allowed to work outside the home. So yes, one could say the amendment wasn't originally intended for immigrants, but we don't know that for sure. And if we take that logic and apply it to the other amendments, well, do you think the founders believed that a 19-year-old should be able to own 100 AR-15s when the musket, which was the gun of the day, took a minute to load, 1 bullet, and today the AR-15 can kill 75 people in the same time? But the most obvious answer to all of this is right in the Constitution. If you don't like what you read, amend it. The Constitution allows for removing anything you feel is wrong, like women not being allowed to vote, or prohibition, which too was amended and thankfully has gotten me through much of Trump's tenure. Same apparently for Pete Six-Pack Hegseth. But the final straw and what Coney Barrett was arguing about is this. What the hell will the landscape look like if birthright citizenship is expunged? And then there's this. Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said this 13 years ago. If I were not an American citizen and could not provide food for my family, I would cross the border illegally to come to the United States. While discussing immigration policy in his memoir, An American Son, Rubio called for common decency in dealing with undocumented immigrants and said if put in a similar position as those who are fleeing destitution, he would break the law too. Rubio said, quote, many people come here illegally and they're doing exactly what we would do if we lived in a country where we couldn't feed our families. If my kids went to sleep hungry every night and my country didn't give me an opportunity to feed them, there isn't a law, no matter how restrictive, that would prevent me from coming here.
Would you also agree that Emma Lazarus's words etched on the Statue of Liberty, give me your tired, your poor, are also part of the American ethos?
They certainly are. Give me your tired and your poor who can stand on their own 2 feet and who will not become a public charge.
Now, there's another side to this. Rubio's parents weren't citizens when he was born, so could he or would he have to be deported?
America is for Americans and Americans only.
And of course, there's this.
It is true our borders are out of control. It is also true that this has been a situation on our borders back through a number of administrations. And I supported this bill. I believe in the idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though some time back they may have entered illegally.
The conservative that so many Republicans hold on high, well, MAGA would have destroyed him based on his comments.
Is to round up the 11 to 15 million illegals and then go through them and find out who belongs here and who doesn't. Would you support that?
Absolutely, and President Trump and I have talked about this at length.
And then there's this. These immigrants MAGA want gone. They're the backbone of our economy, and any move to deport them will have dire consequences. The truth is, if Man-Titties wants to make America great again, he needs more immigrants, not fewer.
In 2022, they paid $96 billion into Social Security and Medicare, just undocumented.
I really don't know what to say about it.
2022, they paid $96 billion into the Social Security Medicare system.
It seems ludicrous that there would be that kind of money coming in.
You are 100% right. Given everything we've heard, it sounds absurd.
But of course, that assumes Trump gives a shit about America or anything other than himself.
We need every voter. I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care.
These founding fathers, they believed strongly that Americans would forever cherish this diverse collection of men and women, all reaching out to the Judeo-Christian principles that guided them. But then again, they never met Trump.
Goddamn right.
That is crazy.
Drop your pants.
Tara.
You're an idiot.
Hail Trump.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Tick-tock.
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.